Uh, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I'm happy one more time I have the opportunity to be with the dear brothers and sisters of Ahlul Bayt Islamic Society of New England, Zikr MIT Shia Muslim Association. As Dr. Musallai said, this is the sixth lecture of the lecture series Hikmah, Wisdom in the Quran, and then we focus in the meaning of the uh, word the Hikmah used in the verses 57 to 65, actually verse 63 of Surah 43, Surah Zukhruf. And also for the occasion we have next week is the first Fatimiyya, the anniversary of the passing away of martyrdom of Hazrat Fatima Zahra Salam alayha. The first occasion I express my condolences to everybody, so all the listeners and the viewers. So let's start as usual. We'll start these lectures with these verse for blessing. أن يؤتي الحكمة من يشاء ومن يؤتى الحكمة فقد أوتي خيرا كثيرا وما يذكر إلا أولو الألباب. He grants wisdom to whom he wishes, and he who is given wisdom is certainly given an abundant good, and none takes admonition except those who possesses intellect. We discussed that there are 20 instances of 20 instances of word hikmah used in Quran in 19 verses. The verse we just recited has twice the word hikmah has come in it. In the first lecture we categorized them in four categories of hikmah given to previous prophets, hikmah revealed to the Prophet Muhammad, hikmah to non-prophets, and the list of four duties of the Prophet, which among them is the teaching of wisdom. But if we go to chronological order of the revelation of these verses, which the word hikmah has come in it, we saw the first instance was the Surah Al-Qamar 54, which we discussed it in the context of the miracle Shaq al-Qamar, the splitting of the moon, and then the next verse was Surah Psalm 38 in the context of wisdom and mulk and authority and kingship and Fasl Khitab, decisive speech given to David. We discussed it in that context. Now today is the third surah chronologically is al-Zukhruf, Surah 43 of Quran, and this would be related to issues regarding Jesus. So that will be our discussion today. So let's read these verses. I I will read the English translation, but we will come to the Arabic too. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان. Maybe, yeah, for saving time, just do the English translation. You can look the Arabic. So, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. When the son of Mary was cited as an example, behold, your people raise an outcry. So this part is saying this surah I will explain is really addressed mostly to the polytheists of Mecca. So when we talk about Mary to the people of Mecca, your people, they object by raising an outcry. And what is their objection? What they're saying is now the verse continues, the Quran continues. They say, are our gods better or he? And the reference, he is Jesus now. They cite him to you only for the sake of contention. Indeed, they are a contentious lot. He was just a servant whom we had blessed and made an exemplar for the children of Israel. Had we wished, we would have set angels in your stead to be your successors on the earth. Oh, I Okay, let me see. Let's go to the Quran because I maybe missed the slides. Sorry, I'm not sure, but or anyway. So, uh, See, just accidentally I deleted or just give me 1 second. Okay, so sorry about that. I think I accidentally deleted, but let's go to okay, we go to here. Actually, maybe it's easier even. Let me share it with you. Okay, so this is directly from the website. So we were reciting it. Look, it says, and they said, "Are your gods better, or is he?" They did not present the comparison except for mere argument, but in fact, they are a people prone to dispute. Just be sure as it's no, the translation is Sahih International. Sorry, right. Okay. So they say, "Are our gods better or he?" They cite him to you only for the sake of contention. Indeed, they are a contentious lot. He was just a servant whom we had blessed and made an exemplar for the children of Israel. Had we wished, we would have set angels in your stead to be your successors on the earth. And say, indeed, he is a portent of the hour. So do not doubt it and follow me. This is a straight path. So he is the portent of our. We have to look who it is referring, what is he is referred to, but we'll see that. Do not let Satan bar you from the way of God. Indeed, he is your manifest enemy. When Jesus brought those manifest proof, he said, I have certainly brought you wisdom, and I have come to make clear to you some of the things that you differ about. So be wary of God and obey me. Indeed, God is my Lord and your Lord, so worship him. This is a straight path. But the factions differed among themselves, so vow to the wrongdoers for the punishment of a painful day. Uh, so if let's go back and have a reading or a look to what is happening here, a little bit structuring it, but then the whole discussion will be uh, uh, eh, expanding in this discussion. Maybe let's see better to go to Arabic part, Quranic part. So uh, look, uh, when when God says, when look, we can see the translation too. Maybe I should have done it from the beginning like this. So when the Son of Mary was cited, and one interesting thing is this. Here it's just saying Son of Mary, not except the Maryam. So the name is not mentioned. So this will come back to it. When Zaraba is mentioned, as an example, then your people, قومك منه يصدون, they object, they raise outcry. And then what is the argument is kind of it seems they heard, and we will see that they heard the message of the prophet regarding the previous prophets, including Jesus, and they have some understanding of Jesus from the Christianity around them, Arab Christian tribes and Christian powers around them, which surrounding the whole peninsula, Arabian peninsula. They're fully aware, they're fully conscious about it. They trade with those countries. They go to Palestine, they go to Ethiopia, they serve in Roman armies, they go to the kingdoms of Ghassanids. So this is the superpower at that time, Christian superpower. So they're completely aware. They're aware of the religion, and the fact they stay mushrik is deliberate. They don't want to be different. They want to distinguish. Many Arabs have converted to Christianity, with some discussed over there. Actually, at that time, if you look to the Arabs population as the whole in Peninsula and in Syria, Palestine, Iraq, I think more Arabs are Christian. the majority, a good majority goes to the Christians. So it's not that the majority of mushrik or polytheists or something else. Actually, the majority of Arabs numerically are Christian. Maybe Yemen have a mixture, and then in Hijaz we have these polytheists. So they know about it, and they kind of, the argument is kind of polemical or some fallacious. They say, "Oh, you say good about Jesus, and okay, Jesus is essentially, it seems is saying that we have to go again." So what I say now is a summary of what we are going to get the whole lecture and going on it in detail. So they may say, "Oh, okay, you say Jesus about Jesus." For example, is good or good representative, but the Christians worship him, and then you say positive about Jesus, and this is the, for example, Jesus, God of Christians, but is not better than our God. So essentially, the understanding should be this: that are our gods better or he? So that kind of question means our gods are better than he, and we have to see why they're arguing it. So the mushrikeen are worshiping some god, or some things they consider gods. Uh, and then, although this also is important in regard to what the religion was, and there's complications over there, and it's a little bit more sophisticated that we usually understood or later Muslim tradition have depicted, Arab tradition. And then I think this is the hot field of research now. Again, some of the Western scholarship again is, as always, is okay. We cannot there to bring doubt to question, but some of the results are important. That we cannot go through that, but I think that they're saying our gods are superior to Jesus, which is God of Christians, and then you are kind of somewhat, they're arguing you are positive towards Jesus or the Christians. And then why their God is more superior, we'll see from the perspective. And then definitely we know Quran is not positive to Christians taking Jesus as God, or in that sense, is or to Christians, or condemning this kind of act of Christians. But it seems at this point, maybe this wasn't as clear. We will see that. Or despite maybe they could have seen it, they decide to not to see it. The Quran is criticizing. For example, you see talking with the Western guy and say, "Oh, you Muslims are all terrorists," and then we say, "Look, you're all ISIS," and then we say, "Okay, look, we are not ISIS. We ISIS actually killed more Shias or Muslims more than any other people." And then that fellow either really didn't know and distinguish that we are not with ISIS, or maybe he could have seen it, but he decided not to see it and use this counter argument against Muslims. So that's the style, logical style these mushrikeen are using. And the Quran says, you look, he says exactly saying that they mentioning Jesus, and in this context and in this kind of argument, they just to throw some argument. They want to do some jadab. They want to go some disputing. But it seems the next passage is Quran answering them. And answering them and answering possibly Christians, and that somehow,
Dr. Ghoddoussi, sorry to
yeah,
interrupt you. You
yeah,
are still on that.
Quran.
Okay, just want to make sure on that
Yeah,
time
yeah,
period.
verse
Just wanna,
58. Yeah, verse 58.
uh, yes, yes.
Yeah,
Just
yes.
wanted to make
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, I haven't moved. Yeah, I'm going.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then the other thing is this um yeah, and then Quran is kind of here will list arguments against the divinity of Jesus, or use this occasion of mushrikeen uh, mixing the things and kind of getting Quran is condoning Christian worship or divine, considering Jesus divine, and then they argue, okay, if Jesus is good, why not our gods are good? To use the occasion to again criticize or demarcate, uh, or state his criticism of the divinity of Jesus as rejection of it, criticizing Christian, and clarify his message. That like somebody again accuse a Muslim, for example, you are supporting ISIS. We say no, we don't, and it's the occasion to explain. For example, we are Shias, they are more against Shias, or so on. We're Muslim, or against this kind of Muslims. And then ولو نشاء and then some of the things Quran mentions, we are not sure how this at the first reading. Maybe we must see how this is related, but in one sense, okay, we can understand. Look, this next verse, for example, had we wished, we'd have set angels in your stead to be your successors on the earth. Okay, the connection here, this angels, which we look again, is maybe that Mushrikeen consider their divine gods are angels, while Jesus is human. And then they were thinking angel gods are much superior to human gods. And then we know that other verses of Quran tell them that they consider there is a supreme God called Allah, but then there are some daughters to that uh, supreme God, Lat, Manat, Uzza, and like some Greek pantheon. And then they are worshiping or they're seeking help from those daughters of God. I mean, so maybe you can say that parallelism with Jesus, which is Son of God, they worship daughters of God. Christians worship Son of God, but there is one difference. They would say our gods are divine. At least they're not human. They're superior. I mean, like go to hierarchy of worshiping. At least worshiping something is not human or superior to human. Isn't it more reasonable than worshiping something human? So kind of their argument is like that. So it's not maybe very off the chart too. And it must be that. Okay, so لا شأن جعلنا منكم ملائكة في الأرض يخلفون. Okay, we have to go this way now. And then this is one of the controversial ones, especially look the translation. وَإِنَّهُ لَعِلْمُ السَّاعَةِ. It says he. Look the English translation. Indeed, he is. And then here is translated portent. Okay, is a little make it word. Elm is knowledge of the Sa'a, which we saw even in the discussion in Surah al-Ghamar, that Sa'a usually means end of times. And who? What is who? What is this is referring? He. And then most probably is Jesus. So Jesus is the sign of end of times. What does it mean? And then, or knowing Jesus, or Jesus himself is knowledge of end of times. Okay, some people say this is a qira'ah problem. Yeah, it seems there is alternative qira'ah, which I don't find time to go check qira'ah, but I can say alam. Ilm is knowledge, alam is sign. So that alam is a little bit seems more natural, but again, we will see maybe alam works very well here too. And maybe more. I mean, it's more confusing, but it maybe, I mean, actually, what with work of Sarah was saying, I think make it very clear. El was so again, you say Jesus is the sign of Sa'a, end of times. That makes sense, but still it is strange how Jesus is the sign of end of times. And I think El makes it harder. How I mean, the wording is a little bit odd. It doesn't say uh, he knows or knowing him uh, makes you, I don't know, maybe you can ask him hour, but he says he's actually the word is knowledge. He's the knowledge of, or other portent is okay, is a good middle translation, actually, maybe a good interpretation. And then so do not doubt it. And then what not to doubt it is our, which Quran's main message is always do not doubt our. So somehow Jesus is manifestation or indication or alam, sign of our. And then now you know Jesus, you have seen Jesus, or you're aware of Jesus. Then this is the mushrikeen, the main problem. Don't doubt if uh, our and follow me, follow prophet, because Quran says this is what is essentially is it's saying to prophet, say this to the mushrikeen, which is this straight path. Uh, and then it says, okay, nobody. I mean, so after saying all this, and nobody, do not let Satan bar you from the way of God. If you do not listen to message, accepting it, essentially, Satan is sitting over there to take you away from that straight path. And then is warning them, don't deviate because he's deceiving you and is your clear enemy, manifest enemy. And then this is the verse we are looking again. It seems something about Jesus. It says, uh, Jesus has come, or when Jesus brought those manifest proofs, which considered mostly some of those miracles which the Quran listed, uh, he said, and then this is interesting, that is not Jesus said, to whom, mostly to the Jewish contemporaries, uh, that I have certainly brought you bil-hikmah. I mean, قد جئتكم بالحكمة, I have come to you with wisdom, but means uh, I brought you wisdom, kind of. You know, like I come home, I say, I've come with kebab, means I brought you kebab, kind of. You know, this is the same thing. You know, I've come home you with cookies, means essentially I brought you cookies. But literally it means I have come to you with hikmah. So I have certainly brought you wisdom. وَلَأُبَيِّنَ لَكُمْ بَعْضَ الَّذِي تَخْتَلِفُونَ. So to clarify some of the things you dispute. So this clearly is talking to the Jews, the differences opinion they have. فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَأَطِيعُونَ. So again, is fear God, mind God, and obey me. And then again, here Jesus adds, I yeah, we can look. And Allah huwa Rabbi wa Rabbukum fa'buduhu hadha siratal mustaqim. Most probably this is saying from the Jesus, and Allah huwa Rabbi wa Rabbukum. So God puts this in the mouth of Jesus, so to completely distinguish that Jesus does himself declare God, Allah is his God, doesn't, he's not God, he's not part of God, he's worshiping God. So in Allah wa Rabbi wa Rabbukum fa'buduhu hadha siratal mustaqim, and this is the straight path. So in the verse 61, it is prophet saying hadha siratal mustaqim, and here Jesus saying is hadha siratal mustaqim. So and then the conclusion, kind of the ending part, is okay, the factions, uh maybe factions between the Jews or factions around the time of prophet, what the factions differed among themselves. Most probably the direct indication is the faction among the Jews which didn't accept his message, and some believe in him, Jesus, some they don't. But a kind of the address is indirectly is toward contemporary or audience Muslims too, or that mushrikins too. فاختلف الأحزاب من بينهم, because it's talking about a dispute, difference between the Jews. And now comes فَوَيْلٌ لَلَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا مِنْ عَذَابٍ يَوْمٍ أَلِيمٍ. So woe to the wrongdoers for the punishment of a painful day. Okay, so we see that this is let's briefly see that, because we make back and forth about these points. So one time I want you just reading the Quran and see there are some parts which challenging, some parts need explanation, and so on. Okay, let's go back to the slides, but rather we come back to the thing. So briefly regarding Surah Zukhruf, because again, to interpret what we want to know, we want to go back Surah Al-Zukhruf. You know, two features of modern commentary, which mostly done in Western academia, but is now absorbed and is going modern Muslim commentary too. One is the chronological order of revelation, which sometimes helpful, and we'll see today we use the argument. It's not the case that we are discussing these verses just in chronological order, but the fact we'll see some important indication today. Uh, the other thing is that, so chronological order revelation of the surahs. The other thing is that surah as a thematic unity. So when you're discussing a pericope, a passage, a verse, we need to look what is around it, what is the context, what is before and after it, what is in the surah, what is the topic of the surah. That also shed light. And then naturally, as many commentators have done, two level of intertextuality, one between surahs, inter-surah intertextuality, textuality, there is something in the surah, similar other surahs, or referring to some other surahs, earlier surahs, especially if you go to chronological order and we imagining the first generation of the believers receiving these verses, we have to imagine or reconstruct what they knew till that time, what verses they have seen, what kind of question raised from them. Especially today, the objection of the mushrikeen kind of is had that structure. So that inter surah textuality is important. Inter textuality with some biblical or non, especially if the issue is related to Christianity and Judaism, is helpful, which we do today. And as I said, intra surah textuality, this different part of this surah, the same surah, maybe they're kind of saying the same thing, emphasizing the same thing, reinforcing each other, so it should be known. So what I suggest is to let's see briefly the structure of the surah, maybe help. So surah is a Meccan surah. It takes its name from the mention of gold Zukhruf in gold ornaments in verse 35. The first brief discussion is about revelation, Kitab, and so this kind of matter, that verse 2 and 2 to 5. Uh, Surah then cites the fate of previous communities who rejected prophets sent to them, which is important theme and is also related here. 6 to 8 challenges the worldview of Meccan idolaters, which in much of this surah is. The verses 9 to 35, different aspects of their worldview is challenged. And this first half, which verses 9 to 35, we can see the list. So the first half of the surah responds to different objections the Meccan idolaters are reported to oppose the message of the Qur'an, and doing so addresses several forms of disbelief which these mushrikeen had, and then kind of refocusing one of their objections, such as so disbelief mushrikeen had was such as assigning partners to God, claiming that the angels are God's female offspring. So kind of this is the other side of that angel and God and female offspring relationship. Because we said the gods they worship also they call them daughters of God. Manat, we have the verse in Quran, which Lat, Manat, and Uzza, that it says that what the Mushrikeen believe. So some of those daughters of God become angels, some of daughters of God become the secondary divine beings, which they associate powers to them or worship them besides God, saying that God will, the other things the Mushrikeen was saying, verse 20 of this surah, saying that God willed for them to worship the angels, as I said, claiming that Quran should have been revealed to someone who was already a high social standing, so objecting to Prophet Muhammad, and likening the place of deities in the religion to the place of Jesus in Christianity, which is the part which we are discussing. A major theme of al-Zukhruf is the incorrect ways in which human beings seek to measure truth, such as claiming to follow the tradition of one's forefathers, verses 22 to 25, and seeing the wealth of this world as an indicator of one's true station. So these are the kind of arguments say we are wealthier, so maybe we have better religion, or which is still used, and especially in Protestant culture is very strong, and maybe Jewish ones even, uh, and also regarding the formal claim, Abraham is cited as an example of someone who opposed his people attachments to their fathers, for the latter claim. So two claim, that we are following the tradition of our forefathers, and then because we are wealthier, we're closer to God, we have better religion. Opposing that idea of following forefathers, the verses 26, 28 is discussing. For the latter claim, the opposition of idolaters to the prophet is likened to the opposition of Pharaoh and his notables throughout Moses. So they couldn't dispute, because in the ancient times the Egyptians, Pharaoh, were the most strongest civilization, and the memory was there still. So they were destroyed. So these mushrikin are not immune from destruction, and they have the same relationship between Pharaoh and Moses, which was a shepherd. The idolaters attempt to liken their worship of the idols to Christian worship of Jesus, also firmly rebuked. This is our topic of a discussion. After these examples are provided, there is an extended contrast of the fate of believers and disbelievers in the hereafter, followed by another challenge to belief system idolaters. Having cited and rebuked many different modes of disbelief, this surah ends with an injunction to the Prophet to remain calm in the face of disbelievers' opposition to his message. So this was the general situation of this verse. Okay, let's go to maybe I go directly today with Saddam Hussein teases, actually, the end of it, sorry. Now, look, maybe start to see. Look, we saw in these verses, Mushrikeen started to. Yeah, let me go to the Quranic one first, then we come back. Look, we saw this crucial verse is this verse 57, 58. That when God mentions, or Prophet Muhammad mentions Hazrat Masih, but even Isa or is not mentioned, Masih is not mentioned, only the son of Mary. We usually have Isa ibn Maryam in the Quran. We have discussed it. This stress to Isa is the son of Mary to is one of the sign of the emphasizing his humanity of Jesus and referencing to Mary and also importance of Mary. But here even Isa is not mentioned even, and we discussed that. Okay, look, they raise an objection. So the objection is that okay, you're talking about Jesus, you're talking positively about Jesus, and even Christians worship Jesus, and Jesus is a human being. We are worshiping angels, saying that our gods are better. So it's kind of saying why you are criticizing us if you accept Christians. So for example, like two child confronting the parents, say, okay, why you say to him, why you, for example, criticizing me while he's doing that, you don't say anything to him, or why you compliment him and then do not compliment us, although I did better, for example, my grades, something like that structure. Okay, so the question is this, because this surah is Mecca, what this mushrikeen maybe have produced this objection by them. I mean, is not necessarily the communication and the message Prophet was uh, targeting or addressing this mushrikeen must be all Quranic. But I think this is most probable at this stage because the quality of message, the miracleness, Prophet usually must have been reciting Quran, not necessarily or expanding on it. So we might want to look what are the Quranic passages before this passage which talk about Jesus. And then we find there are five passages because this is Meccan, a relatively early Meccan. There are not many before this in the chronological order, which again, all the scholarship agree. Two of them, I think Surah Al-An'am, and we can list another surah, is only Jesus is mentioned among the list of the prophets. I mean, that could raise objection by them alone because they were aware about something about Jesus story from the Christians. So even a prophet mentioning Jesus positively, because look, these ideas we have, it wasn't clear for them. The fact all Muslims, Quran, agree with all the previous prophets, and was Quran has a view of prophecy which is different than Christian and Jewish one, and especially the Quran, the prophets are very similar views. You know, most nearly all prophets are archetypes and example of. Let's say it this way: most prophets are instance and archetype example of prophet. Quran many times said they have the same message. If the other one was there, would say the same message. These are not at all trivial, maybe at this time for Mushrikeen or other people. So this comes later on clearly. So the point is that, uh, but generally those two passages is only mentioning Jesus. There is one other passage which actually we discussed it thoroughly when we were discussing Surah to story of Mary. We discussed this more thoroughly. So there's 5 Meccan surahs which somewhat mention Jesus uh, before or in the Meccan period, as we said, at Surah 6, Surah 42 and 23. And Surah 6 and 42, we just, Jesus' name is mentioned among the prophetic figures. Surah 23 is the verse 50 of Surah 23, Mu'minun, as only this verse, which, as I said, we discussed it more thoroughly about when discussing Mary's story. And we made the son of Mary and his mother a sign and sheltered them in a level highland with flowing water. This was an important verse regarding what happened to the Mary and coming out of the temple with the Jesus. And then we said this is a reference to settling Jesus and Mary in Galilee, near the Lake Galilee, which is a highland, level highland, and flowing water, environmentally, different than the central part or southern part of Palestine. Southern part is desert, Negev, and the middle part is not as green as this Galilee. But that's not much related to our case, and this chronologically most probably, and as listed, is after chapter 19. So the only thing is left is chapter 19. So what we are saying is this objection of the mushrikeen uh, regarding Jesus and his nature, and saying if you accept Jesus, why you criticize our gods? But the point we said, Quran doesn't accept Jesus as divine, even as somehow positive message with respect to Christianity. It is criticizing, condemning the divine worship. Jesus worship, consider Jesus as divine. So maybe the only passage we have, Quranic passage, chapter 19. So maybe is needed to look to that. Okay, we have done that before. I don't want to go through that in detail. There is a question why these people didn't notice, or that Quran is criticizing Christians for consider Jesus divine. Uh, or maybe they have done or disregarding it, but the point is this. Let's see briefly Surah 19. And again, we have extensively discussed that. I'm not going to go back there. But look, the early part of Surah 19 is about story of Zachariah uh, uh, and John the Baptist. So it was kind of the end of Surah 15. Then from verse 15, and then from verse 16, the story of Mary was started. وَاذْكُرْ فِي الْكِتَابِ مَرْيَمَ. And then till this continued to verse 33, 34, and around here. The Western scholarship, we discuss it, they consider uh, some of the verses here uh, uh, from verse 34 to 40 and added later on, because the rhyme was changed. And they say this is added later on. Okay, this is possibility to Quran things be added later on. But although we have discussed this, it was the important point, the shoemaker, which some go to the extreme. We have passages which said that Quran adds something later on. Maybe for example, a verse added in Medina to a Meccan surah, so on. But if we take 34 to 40 out, which that was idea of is added later on, then the story we have is the story of Abraham. Although there is some later here, a little story of Jesus too. Again, come back because it was Mary, Jesus, and coming back. The point is this: uh, it it if we let's see these verses which may become added later on. Is this: if you read the first 33 verses, you may not see a very severe criticism of the Christian view of worshiping Jesus. At least this is the argument of some of these Western scholars, and al was saying also work with it. Uh, because there is a positive story of uh, John and Zachariah and Mary and Jesus, and there you don't see very clear criticism of Christian view of worshiping Jesus, but except in these verses, okay? In these verses 33, 34, you can see that God says, okay, this is Jesus, son of Mary, a word of the real concerning whom they are in doubt. And then here clearly God says, Quran says, it is not for Allah to take a son, immaculate is he. When he decides on a matter, he just states to it be, and it is. And then again is added, and Jesus says, indeed, God is my Lord and your Lord, so worship him. This is straight path. But the factions differed, and you see exactly that phrase, اختلاف الأحزاب, which we saw in the verses of Surah Zukhruf, which Jesus come to put on these differences, but this time is again اختلاف الأحزاب, but the factions differed among themselves. So vow to the faithless the sense of determined to stay. And then he says, how will they hear and how will they see on the day when they come to us? Okay, so the point is this. I don't need to go to the latter verses. Either Mushrikeen have not heard, we can say, because these two verses are very clear. Look, they're very straight say, if you say if you say Jesus is divine, you are saying something really wrong, and God is condemning it clearly. With, I don't think it's ambiguous. It is not for God to take a son. Immaculate is he when he decides on a matter. He just said to it be, and it is. And then, and indeed, God is my Lord and your Lord, so worship him the straight path. So it seems if Mushrikeen had heard this verses, at least the apparent way, say they shouldn't object to the prophet that, oh, you say Christians are good, uh, and Christian worship Jesus, and Jesus is human God. So why you criticize our God, which are angel God? It's like I said, a child criticizes his parent. For example, you give my brother some reward, why you don't give it to me? But then they remind him, look, we buy you a car, or I don't know, we buy you PlayStation, so on. So, I mean, this can happen only a child forgot the PlayStation, or not ever buying PlayStation, or disregarding it. So one line of argument, these guys said maybe, okay, these verses were added later on and wasn't part of the Surah Maryam, or at maybe Surah Maryam, the early part to verse 33 was revealed, which could be by that time, because Hayyan is different rhyme. After this, 34 to 40 have different rhyme. And then, this is the early Quran. And then when we call the chronological order of revelation of the surah is the beginning. So it was possible that the first 33 verses of Surah Al-Maryam revealed, and then Surah Al-Dukhan started, Surah 43, and these verses 34 to 40 has not yet revealed. Or even the rest of Surah Maryam has not revealed. Or maybe the rest of Surah Maryam, because has nearly the same rhyme, was revealed, but because when you go after here, more or less the rhymes is similar or they have the same to the end. Maybe added here. So there is a possibility that the mushrikeen were not aware of these verses, or maybe they knew about it, they discarded. Look, now people know Muslims are not ISIS, and they know it for many years, and they know that Shias are mostly killed, more killed than anybody else by ISIS. But nowadays they call, for example, the candidate for New York mayor as, I don't know, terrorist, ISIS member, or supporting someone and so on. So these guys, is not that they don't know, they deliberately disregard. So this is one part of the story. But I have to add, the Suratul Ikhlas, Qul Huwallahu Ahad, is also a criticism of the Christian view. And I do not think that verse is, some people say that al-Ikhlas, Qul Huwallahu Ahad, Allahu Samad, Lam Yalid, Walam Yulad, Walam Yakul Lahu Kufuwan Ahad some say this is targeting advocacy of this surah is mainly Christians, Surah Al-Ikhlas, Surah Qul Huwallahu Ahad. But this surah is very early. The advocacy must have been mushrikeen, but essentially is explaining for them what is this Allah, what I'm saying. How much is similar to the Allah you believe, or was it different to Allah you believe? Because it's explaining Allah. It is Samad, it's Ahad. But also said it doesn't begot a child, is not begotten. I think any Christian would understood by the wording that it is their views rejected. Maybe Mushrikin didn't understand that, but I doubt that because they must know Christianity more. Because I said they're not Christians, even nowadays many are. We're not Muslim or we are not Christian in Muslim countries. I'm sorry, but we understand something about Christian views. It was okay. Today we know we have internet stuff like that, but it was the case even 200 years ago. Some understanding was there. So, uh, I'm saying, why this mushrikeen make this kind of fallacy and this kind of argument? Uh, didn't they? Maybe they didn't know. There's some argument people say, okay, even this first 33 verses of Surah Al-Maryam, which is said the only Quranic passage with some detailed explanation of the story of Jesus and Mary, there is a mild criticism of Christians. But maybe Quran is not doing the sharp criticism, he hasn't done yet. And that is the Mushrikeen didn't see that because maybe he wants to have the frontier of believers, monotheists. Still, Quran consider this Christians people of the book. So it doesn't want to open any war between people of the book. So because these are mushrik, at the early stage, Quran is Jews and Christians, especially Mecca, is very positive. So he wants to define the people of scripture, people of the book, the so-called Abrahamic religion and monotheist front against Mushrikeen. So you don't have even much criticism of the Jews or Christians, which is in Medina period here. So maybe we can make the image like that. The Quranic criticism, a Christian view, was very subtle. This first 33 verses. Maybe the verses 34 to 40 was not revealed by that time. So maybe the Mushrikeen thought that Quran is, when referring to Jesus, is referring to Jesus Christians believe, which Jesus is divine, and then the objections could be sound. But Quran also says they're really kind of, they're just polemical, so they contentious. They know this is not the case. They just want to sake of argument, bring some argument, like these guys say, mayor of New York is, I don't know, ISIS or so on. And then, and as I said, Surah Qul Huwallah, Ikhlas was there. So it was really rejecting anybody can be son of God. Okay, let's go to our surah now, because this background I think was needed to say what was the case this Mushrikeen was saying. Uh, so now, uh, okay, look, in this Quran, when it answered them, it says, okay, first, Jesus was our servant, so it denies divinity. But a servant, we blessed him. Look again, the English translation. It was just a servant we had blessed. Blessed means give him some unique features, his birth without father, speaking in the cradle, the miracles he performed, all of those is blessing a servant, a human being received, and then we put him in a masalan lebani Israel. So this is the first example. So we have to see what this masalan means. That's the first thing Quran mentions. Then this issue of the angels, which maybe not very clear, but God says, uh, and then you see the wording also is a little bit uh, not a little bit I'll say again odd, because he said, I wish we would have set angels in your stead. But if you read it carefully, and we would made angels from you. وَلَوْ نَشَاءُ لَجَعَلْنَا مِنْكُمْ مَلَائِكَةً. Look, okay, the translation is smoothed it. We wished we would have set angels in your stead. That is, we replace you from angels. But even it goes stronger. We will extract from you angels. So we will replace you by angels, but the angels which come were made out of you uh, as your successors. So this is a little bit why this ability of God should be emphasized. So kind of must be something related to this uh, belief of Mushrikeen regarding their gods, which are angels or as daughter angels of God or angel children of God. So you see, this is two topic in the discussion. The third one is Jesus not only is not a sign of our, even is more than that. Here says portent, but portent is kind of is like a saw, but the reading is really is uh, it is knowledge of. He is nahu la ilmun saw. He's knowledge of end of times. And then, so this is the third thing we have to discuss. And then the fourth thing, okay, he comes with miracles or manifest proofs, maybe bayyināt. He came with or brought you wisdom. Okay, maybe this is fourth together, fourth or fifth. And then the sixth, or maybe all part of this fourth one, uh, to clarify something, you have differences. So let's clarify those first three or four to reach the Hikmah and understand what's happening. And all these four, it should be understood as somehow rejecting this statement on Mushrikeen. And simultaneously, if there's any doubt for even Christians or any other people that Quran is not accepting Jesus or the type or type of worship Christians give to Jesus is not accepted, is not condoned, but very, very strongly condemned. Because we don't have passages before this. Look, this is early Quran revelation, except maybe Surah al-Ikhlas, which the name of Jesus is not explicitly mentioned, name of Christianity not explicitly mentioned. Maybe some Mushrikeen have not heard it or missed it. That's possible. So they don't know all the Quranic verses to raise such of objection. Okay, so let's go to uh, One thing I want to mention. Okay, one other thing I mentioned is this. Look, this issue, because we are talking about Hikmah. Okay, let me show it to the slide to you. We are talking about Hikmah, and then the verse of Quran says, Jesus brought you wisdom, or Jesus came with wisdom. Okay, there is a biblical passage which clearly says that. Look, uh, so many commentators stop there. So one of them, for example, Luke 21:15 says, uh, Jesus is saying that I'll give you words and a wisdom. Suf, philosophy and Sufiya coming as Sufiyan. Here, maybe one wisdom, a wisdom that none of your opponents will be able to withstand or contradict. So it seems he's a teacher of wisdom, or giving a wisdom, or brought wisdom. So what we saw in the verse 63 is seen in the Bible too. But I think it's deeper. That's what Sarah Hussein does, and most commentators have not done that. And and that's what we want to do. Look, however, closer reading of Jesus pericope, these passages, uh, verses 57 to 65 of Surah al-Zukhruf, can reveal more about both why Jesus is portrayed as a teacher of wisdom and what precisely the Quran means by hikmah here. So that's some of those details I'm emphasizing is there. And the context of Luke is different, but I don't think we need to be worried by that. So let's go back to the teasers. So I explained these parts. One one interesting point is, I alluded that in the Surah to Zukhruf, Jesus is referred to as son of Mary. Okay. Okay, most of the time in Quran, Jesus is referred as the phrase as Isa ibn Maryam. But here is Ibn Maryam. Ibn Maryam. And then so even is not so always the reference is to Mary. We said that could be, and uh, besides the respect of Mary and her importance, and then that's she has placed as a reference, but also emphasizing humanity of Jesus. But in this verse, in the Surah Zukhruf, even the name Jesus has not come. And then in the we saw in Surah al-Mu'minun, which we just saw, it is another verse talking about Jesus and Mary are settled in Galilee. Again, there is Jesus is referred to as son of Mary. Her name is not mentioned. And it seems now this word, because these are the early instances, uh, Quran talk about Jesus, and it's interestingly his name is not mentioned. Even if we go back to Surah to Maryam, remember we said there are four surahs before this surah. Two of them just list Jesus in the name of the prophets, and two other ones, the Surah to Mu'minun had just one line discussion. Surah to Maryam, okay, has long discussion. But if you look to Surah to Maryam, in the first 33 verses, again, the name of Jesus is not mentioned. Is a child, is a son of Mary, but the name is not mentioned. Look, we are looking chronological order, so could be that early stages Quran, for whatever reason, prefer not to mentioning the name of Jesus. And there have been some dispute the name too. And then look, the name of Jesus in Arabic is Isa. And in Hebrew is Yeshua, Yesu. And then till recently was a big dispute, not settled, how this Yesu has changed to Isa. Yes, Ain has come in the beginning instead of Ya. And then Ya had a big, I don't want to go through that, but it was I mean, at least the idea was that is it done this by Quran or was before Quran this has happened? Yani that is this Quran calling Jesus instead of Yeshua and Yeshua, which is some derivative of Joshua, Isa with Ain at the beginning, or before that this happened. Till recently, people thought Quran has done that, but it seems when inscription is found recently in some Proto-Arabic language, it seems the name has been entered Arabic language before Quran as Isa. Because if it wasn't the case, if it was Quran doing, then this brought some question what it has done. And there were some theological justifications. Look, I saw one guy said because the Jewish uh, uh, people they put a lot of emphasis this Yah at the beginning of the word because the name of the God is Yahweh YHWH, and that Y for them is the sign of divine creativity. And then you see many of the names of the people start with Yah. For example, not always, but we have John the Baptist is Yahya, and Jesus was Yeshua, and then I'm saying this discussion with the words and letters was there. Some people said the idea was that, but we know it's not Quranic anymore, so maybe we shouldn't discuss this much. But some people have proposed Quran deliberately moved the ya from the beginning to the end to deny that uh, uh, that ya, the beginning of Jesus, represent divine creativity, Yeshua, and then in some sense Jesus is divine. The same way Quran completely denied crucifixion. These people are arguing like that. Uh, that name is not working, but the crucifixion, we know Quran totally rejected. The whole story around crucifixion, Paul, I don't know, original sin, stuff like that. I mean, Quran even doesn't dispute it. It said he was not crucified. Whatever you want to say, 2,000 years of theology around it. He wasn't crucified. But the point is this. Uh, uh, I think this not mentioning of Jesus' name here wouldn't be too accidental. And I know I'm a little bit. Maybe we need another lecture to go to finish this because there's some interesting stuff. And the reason I'm doing it just we start to the end of the lecture, some other interesting stuff. The point is that look, even you go to the word Allah. I said in the previous discussion, Allah is the most common word used in the Quran. But to surprise, if you see, besides Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, which is the beginning of surahs, if you look to the early surahs revealed to Prophet Muhammad, Allah is not used much inside the verses, inside the surah. Maybe not at all. The first 29. It's very surprising that Allah is the most common. And Quran deliberately use Rabb or sometimes Ar-Rahman. And we know that in one verse of Quran, Surah Al-Isra, Quran says, whether you call him Allah or you whether call him Ar-Rahman, doesn't matter. They're the same. And this is the beautiful names of God. Because the northern tribes of Arabia, which Quraysh also belonged to them, Mecca more closer to them, they used to call the supreme God Allah. But in South Arabia, in Yemen, the God Allah was called Ar-Rahman, Rahmanan, and become on at the end, Rahmanan. Quran at the early stages, it seems preferred to not use the word Allah, use Rab or Rahman, possibly because some background views the Mushrikeen had about Allah. So by this is the same dispute we have in America that whether we have to translate Allah or God, and then when some people object if you translate God in English, they have much back connotation in English language, some background. This is Trinitarian God, this is understanding. So you have to translate it Allah. The same kind of argument is said maybe the word Allah, Quran initially has not used they do not confuse or mix it or think this God is the Allah the Mushrikeen believe in. It is different. The name has different meaning. The same way even the prophet stories is different. But Allah is crucial here. Yaqub in Quran is not Yaqub in Bible. So the same person but very different character. But and till Quran gradually explain what it means by Allah. With Surah Al-Ikhlas is the crucial surah in this regard, and some other ones. So the same way Jesus' name initially maybe is not mentioned even. And then Son of Mary just referred. Gradually, Jesus, Son of Mary, then Messiah, Jesus, Son of Mary, or Jesus, the Messiah, Messiah came. So you see this progress happen. So this chronological looking sometimes open patterns which you don't see, and I will explain this more. Okay, so yeah, as I said, if we accept this Western view that which could be right, that maybe at least regarding Surah Al-Zukhruf, not the radical things Guillaume D and Shoemaker say, which doesn't make sense, and now is really rejected by Western scholars too. That if this verses 34-40 were revealed later, uh, Surah Al-Maryam is the only one Mushrikeen know. Still presented an anti-Christian polemic, but a little bit subtle one through paralleling Mary and Jesus to Zechariah and John, and through presenting Jesus not as the culmination of salvation history, but rather as merely one prophet among many. But maybe the message was evidently too subtle for the Meccan associators, that they can disregard or on rejection of divinity of Jesus and putting forward such an argument. What is the argument was who seized upon the apparent absurdity in the prophet denouncing their angelic God while invoking Jesus as a parable. We don't know exactly their objection, what it is, but as I said, we try to build it. Uh, and as I said, the most probable one is this. They think they're divinities whom they consider to be angelic children, like the verses 100 Surah Al-An'am. It is more worthy, or Surah even Zukhruf ayah verse 19, were more worthy worship than man God Jesus, as I explained. Uh, and then somehow also maybe because I think historically also the Arab of Hijaz wanted to be independent, want to be different from the other areas. They didn't pick up Christianity, Judaism. The Arabs to the north, they become mostly Christians. Even the Arabs under Sassanid Empire in Iraq were Christian. Arabs to the south, this Yemeni tribes were for a while Jewish, but the Arabs in Hijaz and Najd remain polytheists. We have the same situation. This call. I mean, I'm not sure how much true it is, but the Khazarites. The Khazarites are the tribe living the north of Caspian Sea, or yeah, Lake, yeah, Arabic called Lake Ghazvin. They say there were some polytheistic views, and their king to the east, to the south were Muslims, to the west and north were Christians. And then he has to decide a religion. He decided to become to Jewish religion, and then not to be Christian and Muslim, to keep the identity. They say many that I'm not sure the theory is how much right or not, but the 13th tribe, they say maybe many of the Jews of today are really Khazarite more than be from Middle East. So this kind of one line of argument, they would say if it's accepted to have a human God, this is the argument of Mushrikeen, yes. So why you don't keep our local deity? So that's bring us, okay, wasn't our own gods better than those Jesus God, which is God of, for example, Romans or something like that? But we know Quran doesn't treat Jesus as God, and that's the whole explanation is, and then the meaning Hikmah will come out of it. So it's somehow that issue of devotion to forefathers, which we said the previous verses was criticizing. One of the aspects of this surah was criticizing that argument that we are not doing anything except what we find our fathers doing, and the Quran criticized that view. Okay. Uh, yeah, as I said, I know I'm going a little bit slower, but I think some of the stuff here are as interesting as understanding Hikmah. And so the reason I'm saying is this. Now, there is, as I said, we look a little bit the background context or the surahs, other surahs, which revealed before this surah as a background context of this surah. But also inside this surah are at least two passages which are somewhat are relevant. And just there before this passage. One is the verse 44 to 45, which Sarah was saying called the threat pericope, threatening mushrikeen. And then the passage 46, 56 is just before our passage, is Moses pericope. And then because, look, Moses and Jesus, this is again maybe one of the first instances coming together. These are the two prophets which they're prophet of scripture, the people are prophet of the book. They're Jews and Christians, Torah and Injil. So for understanding the passage 57 to 65, it is important we have a look maybe to these previous passages. That makes the passage more clear. Although apparently the independent passage is not clearly connected, but there is some, this is style of Quran, there is some connection. Okay, so I will read them fast, 40 to 45, and maybe the Moses one maybe we don't have much time to read it, but look, I just read the early verse. This is the 40 to 45 Surah Zukhruf. Can you then make the deaf hear or guide the blind and those who are in plain error? Maybe I read this one. We will indeed take vengeance on them, whether we take you away or show you what we have promised them. For indeed we have told them in our power. We have hold them in our power. So hold fast to what has been revealed to you. You are indeed on a straight path. It is indeed a reminder for you and your people, and soon you will be questioned. Ask those of apostles we have sent before you, did we set up any gods to be worshipped besides the merciful? This is important one. This is important. I mean, maybe I wasn't, because this, even before quoting the objection of Mushrikeen, is kind of answering them. We never had set up any God, or is objecting to them, but essentially we can say is a rejection of divinity of Jesus too, because he once says it is a God besides the merciful. And the merciful, remember, is the name Quran use for God. And as I said, many early passages, and even the early surahs, maybe this merciful, except to Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, is more used for God instead of Allah. And then we have Moses, which maybe when I compare it, we see the story of Moses, but you can read it, is the confrontation with the Pharaoh, and is that part. So one of the differences Quran answer the mushrikeen, because you say, okay, they emphasize that this prophet has a scripture, what is telling you something, but you guys do not have any scripture. There's no why coming to you. You're just talking about your desires. Okay, so this is also to have the background and the previous verses. But let's go to the Moses one. I think I have to go a little bit faster. Look, the Moses passage, which is just immediately before this passage, 46 to 56, before ours, which is 57 to 65, and I didn't read it, had some very interesting parallelism. And that is good to see. And that can help for some of the conclusion we get at the end. Look, so in one column we have the Moses 46, 56, and the other column we have Jesus pericope, the one we're discussing 56, 67. Some of the passages and the wording is seen parallel. So in the Moses, the Pharaoh says, am I not better? Am ana khayrun than this rich? So this time Pharaoh comparing itself with the Moses itself. But this time in the Jesus pericope, Mushrikeen comparing their gods with Jesus. Are our gods better? Alahatuna khayrun, and he. That is Jesus. And so their Pharaoh also claimed divinity, and which is a false god, comparing himself with the messenger of God, which is here Moses. Here, these Mushrikeen comparing the false gods to Jesus, which, okay, again, a Quranic view is not a god, just a human and the same as Moses. So you see, that parallelism also emphasized that. And then Pharaoh says, who cannot even speak clearly. So, we know the story that Moses maybe wasn't fluent and had some problem with the tongue, that asked God to send Harun to help him. So Pharaoh put a kind of emphasizing that, but here the parallelism is emphasized in speaking clearly or bayyināt. It seems the Jesus one is not negative, but emphasizing, okay, Jesus brought clear proofs. Even Moses had clear proofs with miracles, but his speaking wasn't very fluent, but had Harun with him. But here Jesus have none of those problems. It's kind of, see, this parallelism it put for the Mushrikeen to warn them, your destiny will become the same as Pharaoh, so you will punish. When Jesus brought clear proofs at Bayyināt, he said, I brought you wisdom and I come to make clear to some of the things you differ about. And then the other parallelism is that why have no bracelets of gold been cast upon him, nor any angels accompanying him as escorts? This is verse 53, the Pharaoh passage. Why Moses? What's such a, this guy is God. Why he's not wearing golden bracelets or angels are not with him? And then it seems the verse 60 in the Jesus pericope, Quran is answering the angel part. It says, had we wished, we would have made from you angels to be your successors on the earth. But still the phrase made from you angels, this is the literal translation, is a little bit unclear. Thus did he mislead his people and they obeyed him? This is God says about Pharaoh, but here God says to Jesus pericope, so be wary of God and obey me. Again, some parallelisms here. And then another one is, thus we made them. This is Pharaoh people. Jalnahum, bygone people, an example myself for the posterity. So in this verse 56, says those people or the situation, maybe even is not Pharaoh alone, the story of Pharaoh and Moses, an example. What happened to Pharaoh? When Moses, this is exactly what, like the David Goliath story is Moses and Pharaoh. Nowadays we see the Ten Commandments movie, stuff like that. So Moses is a shepherd coming alone, standing to the ruler of superpower of his time. So this has been example for posterity. And this is the same for Jesus. He was just a servant, like Moses is a humble person. It wasn't divine. We blessed and we made him Jalnahu. And then you see the word Jalna is here too, some clues. An example of myself for the children of Israel. I mean, because of the words and because Quran is an oral recitation, and these many words common in these two back-to-back passage, I think we can accept there are some really intentions of parallelism established. And is this. So this is the conclusion. Again, we're still in the background, I understand, but I try to go forward and we'll finish it next lecture. Jesus' ministry is thus depicted to a certain degree to be parallel to the ministry of Moses. And this technique is familiar in the Quran. In Surah to Maryam, Jesus is portrayed as just one of his several messengers, and where he was shown as having parallel life and teaching to John the Baptist. When we did it in the Surah of Maryam, we saw many parallel passages between the first 16 verse, which is the story of John and Zechariah, and the verses from first 15 verses, 16 to 33, 18 verses over there, which the story of Mary and Jesus. So you can see the parallelism. Both of them were just servant, apt, and both were example and masal for Israelites, their story, their event, what happened with them. Had God wished, he could make angels inherit earth from us. And okay, I'm sorry. This is I'm sorry. This is not parallelism order. Actually, this is the main part. I'm sorry. So let's say it again. Look, so we saw these background too. So we saw till now two backgrounds. One background was chronological order of the other surahs, which was revealed between this surah, and then we say why the mushrikeen has this objection raised. And then we saw inside the surah, intra textuality, there were two passages. Although I didn't delve in detail in them, we can read it, but those two passages, especially Moses passage, because of many parallelism, and also not only the phrases, but not only the meaning of the passage have some parallelism, also the wording used. So that may be important for understanding the passage we are working on. But then I emphasize this, which I emphasize there. This part of the our Jesus passage pericope has four parts, which is kind of used as an answer to the Mushrikeen objection. One is no, God says no, he's not divine. I mean, I don't accept worship of Jesus. Jesus wasn't divine. So he says he was just a servant and an example, masal for the Israelites. So I mean, got something about the masal example in the Moses passage. Then God, if had God wished, he could make the angels inherit the earth from us. So that's emphasis of angel maybe answering Pharaoh in the Moses passage, but we have to look this is a little different way, detail we have to look. Jesus was knowledge of the hour. Again, if you literally translate it, is not sign of an hour, which again, even that should be understood in what says how Jesus is a sign of an hour or knowledge of an hour, which is a difficult expression that we shall explore. And then the one we were looking, he brought wisdom, the fourth part, and to clarify the dispute between the Israelites. Okay. So at this, let's finish. I think we have 20 minutes or a little bit less. We finish. If there is any question, Saleh, I don't think. Yeah, is there any question?
No, I don't see any question. Yes, you can take the
Yeah,
time till 9. Yeah,
yeah,
thank you.
yeah. So okay. So we look this. So you see now after all those background, we have to look these four sections. And then we start to four sections. The fourth one, which our concern become more clear. The first one, I think we are familiar with it. Quran mentioned it other places too. Uh, and then as Quran tell them, kind of, how this mistake happened when Mushrikeen is not clear, but okay, we give benefit of the doubt. Maybe there wasn't verses 34 to 40 in the context of Jesus. Maybe they were not ever Surah al-Ikhlas was the context of uh, Jesus and Christianity. So they thought maybe Quran, when it's saying positive things regarding Jesus, is accepting Jesus the same way Christians think about it as a divine. But here Quran clearly reject. The Quran does not speak approvingly of divinity besides God because Jesus was merely an app, and he's being a masal is probably a reference to his virgin birth. What is true significance is not a sign of divinity, but a rather miracle for the children of Israel to benefit from. And then the point which, okay, we have to add, and that's partially this lecture and the whole of next lecture would be, Quran used this occasion of answering the objection by mushrikeen to not only answer mushrikeen, but actually severely and strongly criticizing the Christology or Christian belief about regarding Jesus. Because by hitting two targets by one shot, you use the time. And this second part is not very well understood or seen because it's subtle. And that's called, Sarah was saying it very, I think, very fantastic job here. and then much of it I go to next lecture, that these things become clear and why this wording is used, because a little bit, for example, the knowledge of our, what does it mean? And what is this angel issue that I can make you angel, or bring angels out of you that replacing you? All those is something targeting that. Uh, so that's make it more important. Okay, so as he says, let me read this part, I think mostly from it to I think some of it interesting. So this, we said, this first answer Quran is, no, he's a servant of us, merely was a servant, nothing more. And okay, but I know there's some interesting stuff happening regarding him, like a virgin birth, he was born without father and all those stuff. But those doesn't make him divine. Those just are making him a miracle, an example, the same way God has other examples, like the opening the river, and Moses with staff becomes serpent, or Moses staff hit and splitting the Nile or the Red Sea, and then drowning uh, the Pharaoh's army. These are miracles, not a sign of divinity of Jesus, a sign of the power of God. You know, the the fact that Jesus born out of Father is showing the power of the God can do anything, and Jesus is child coming out of it. So this understanding of Masal, as we said, is which is what is understanding? Masal is not a sign of divinity, but rather a miracle for the children of Israel to benefit from. Comes from the both stories if you read together. So let me read it. This understanding of Masal is evident from the fact that passage is responding to criticism arose following the proclamation of Surah Maryam Annunciation story, and from how the argument is developed in the following verse, that God, if God had wished, would have made for you Ja'alnakum angels to be successors on the earth. In other words, God is able to create any creation out of any other. So also kind of the other issue angel is showing. Although we go through that one more time, I think next lecture, he can look. God can do anything. He can make a child without father and from a woman. Oh, this is strange. More stranger, God can create angels out of human beings, and then erase. So it's nothing limit the power of God. He can make angels from mankind and bring forth a child from a virgin. Both are just manifestation of creative power. The virgin birth is therefore not, as the associators evidently knew, that the Christians were arguing. Yeah, okay, sorry, I read it wrong. That the virgin birth is therefore not, as the associators, polytheists of Mecca, evidently knew that the Christians were arguing a sign of Jesus' divinity. Look, Christianity from the beginning was arguing Jesus' virgin birth is a sign of his divinity. Even they didn't have the miracle Jesus talking in the cradle. That in Quran came, not in their book. But it is argued by the Quran, no, this is not the sign of divinity, it's sign of power of God. And God can do more than that, can bring angels out of humans. And kind of, that the other side of it, some angels appear as human to the Abraham or other prophets, even people of Lot see those angels as human beings. So maybe I don't know how these transforms happen or what it is, the transformation, but it's not that very odd. And then you would see that interestingly in this verse 59 of Surah al-Zukhruf is very similar to the verse 30 Surah Maryam, and here is less ambiguous even, because in Surah Maryam, this being servant, Jesus said this when was in the cradle. He was just born. And then when Mary went back to the village or place he was born, and then the according to the revelation, the plan was that she does not speak, and then if the people asking what is this, she has to point to the child, and then child start to talk, and Jesus said, he said, I am indeed a servant, apt of God. He has given me the scripture and made me a prophet. In Surah Maryam, it's like this, but here it is more explicit that God clearly said, there was Jesus himself saying that he was just a servant. God says, Surah Zukhruf, he was just a servant, apt who will be blessed We give some special features to him, and we made him an example, masal for the children of Israel. So and so as said, outright divinity is rejected. So and then summarizing one more time that Jesus' virgin birth becomes nothing more than illustration of God's power for the benefit of the Israelites. This is verse 59. Verse 60, this angelic one, I mentioned it, but you know, the verse is a little bit, the wording, as I said, is, I think we can finish this angelic too. The wording is a little bit confusing, is, as I said, had we wished, we would have made from you, جَعَلْنَا مِنْكُمْ, angels to be your successors on the earth. Sometimes I think it's better the translator do not smoothen it and do not give, the easy ones is that, which the translation we had, we replace you with angels. Okay, it is replacing with angels, but it's in a complicated way. These angels come out of us. جَعَلْنَا مِنْكُمْ, angels. So this is more that okay, maybe some people leave and other people come get to replace them. No, but it's coming out of them. So, and then, for example, Zamakhsharī, as for example, the Sahaba was saying, agreed, believes that the placement of the verse here is to make the point that God could have humans beget angels, just as easily he made a virgin give birth to Jesus. And then there are some discussion. We don't have time to go what, because this ja'alna minkum is the clue to this a little bit stranger understanding. They have these science fictions, something is going to somebody and then suddenly came out and so on. Why? But I'm saying this, it says this power of God can do more. While this explains the logical flow of the verse, the question is, but now Sarah was saying, says, okay, you are right. Maybe Zamakhsharī or anybody says is right, but why among all the powers God have, why all different odd or strange or miraculous things God can do, why God should emphasize bringing angel out of human? Okay, you can say anything else. You could say, okay, I can create 5 million earths, or I can do many things. This wants to surpass of the virgin birth, okay, which is still human mechanism, but without father, and so on. But uh, I but okay, one answer angel is okay because mushrikeen were believing their divine gods are angel or angel children of God or angel gods superior to human gods. So God kind of would say those angel gods are not very different than human gods, and none of them are gods because I can make angel out of humans too. That's one level of answering. So the fact this making angel out of human beings as a sign of power of God is mentioned to answer mushrikin. But the one other level is answering Christians. And again, and this is interesting because it shows Quran is very clearly about the Christology at that time. The Christology is because they go to this Trinity and they never come out of it, and I don't think nobody understood what it is, and every now and then is changing. The summary is there were many theories of Christology at that time that they treat Jesus or consider Jesus be the form of an angel. And the word angel is not very even, and then some of those views have affected Islamic world too. And always you have the question, was Shaitan was the angel or not? So we see jinn, no, he wasn't, because jinn is different from angel. Uh, okay, I don't want to go through that, but I have to say that there were some theories of Christianity which makes Jesus a form of angel, and Quran is rejecting that too. Now those theories are not apparently more common, but it were very prevalent or commonly accepted earlier century. They have died away a little bit, or get less followers for a while, but they were becoming reviving. And just I give you one of the theories which has come through even Islamic philosophy too, is coming from a Greek pre-Christian philosopher Plotinus. And then because Muslims thought the book written by him, written by Aristotle, observing to Aristotle, they thought the hierarchy of creation was like that. God was alone, but God alone, for some philosophical reason, cannot, or what I have to say, let's say simplify it like this. God alone reflect on himself, and then the first thing was coming out of this reflection, because they want to explain how God created things, and if it's created through time, what was that situation that uh, made God to create, not before or not later, all these philosophy things. But the point is this: God reflection produced, sometimes we call it in Farsi, in Arabic, aql, or active intellect. And then the hierarchy of creation become 10 of these intellects. And then historically, many Muslim philosophers, so God reflected, an intellect was created. And then there's the interaction of God and that intellect, another intellect was created, and so on. The hierarchy goes to 10. Why 10? I don't know. But I read somewhere, you see the books of Sohrawardi, it's everywhere. It's everywhere in Islamic philosophy, Christian philosophy too. It's sophisticated. It's much of the things explained. And then the idea was, and it still is, the last one, they call it Aql Fa'al, is Gabriel. The last of these angelic being is the Gabriel. And the Gabriel, this Aql Fa'al has some important functions. For example, the way we can understand or comprehend outside world, the world outside us, because that's the solipsism, even René Descartes, or epistemology of Western philosophy stuck in it after Descartes, that because all our senses can do mistake, and how we can know what is this, what we see, the color I see, because physics says it's only matter and extension and moving particles, and where is this color? There's no color in the wavelength we look. The color is my brain. The color yellow or white I'm seeing on the screen, the green I'm seeing on the screen. If I'm not there, there is no color to understand. I mean, is there or not? I mean, that's the good. But and but the sense of colorness is generated in the brain, because the wavelength is there, not the color. And then how it is accurate, they would say really Apple Fa'al would do it. That 10th intellect knows the outside world, knows our mind, it makes it correctly. Then, okay, this is Aglafal that many make it equal to Gabriel, which is, the second person of Trinity. But who's Jesus at the first one? So you see, these theories were there. And I think Quran, the same way say he wasn't crucified, reject the all theology around that by saying, okay, I can take angels out of you human beings, so this is not such a big deal. These angels, all those stuff is rejected. So you see that the fact that God, among all the miracles, powerful things can do, is mentioning I can make angels succeeding you, and not only succeed you, I can take these angels out of you to succeeding you, is kind of putting away this all angelic understanding of Jesus, and maybe the middle way. Okay, he's not divine, but he's angel. Is okay. So let's finish here. How much time we have? Yeah, 1 minute, 2 minutes. Let's see. Yeah, look, let me read this paragraph. In either case, the verse and its placement in the pericope can only be grasped if it takes some sort of angelomorphic Christology to lie in the background. So I didn't explain what those theories of Christology, of Jesus angel. I said something, this the top hierarchy stuff like that. But we don't have time for it. I mean, he had to argue, show, okay, really they said this kind of stuff. Who said that? What they said? We don't need to go through that. But we cannot say, understand, God is targeting two, both mushrikeen, which they thought their angel gods are better, but also Christians that some, which is not as common now. If you go talk to them, no, no, we never think Jesus is angel or that. But there were people because they know the problems. There all. This is the top dispute. What is the nature of Jesus? The whole Christianity was split into three main branches in Middle East. They were fighting each other. A Monophysite, and the Jacobites and the Eastern Church. So was huge. So a sort of so if we take some sort of angelomorphic Christology to light the background, however it have risen. It is possible that echo of the same Christology is found in the Qur'an 172, Surah An-Nisa. Christ could never disdain being a servant of God, nor would the angels brought near him al-malaikat al-muqarrabun. Again, even the verse 170 Surah An-Nisa, which again talk about Jesus being a servant and also says angels will all obeying him, again is putting angels also in a lower hierarchy. Because this is the only place Quran talks about angelic al-malakat al-muqarrabun, which is we don't need to go through that discussion. But the coordination of this phrase with Christ suggests some degree of affinity between the two in the mind of audience. In some audience at that time, maybe not now, Christ being an angel or some kind of angel or top angel, uh, which different from Gabriel, but an angel higher than Gabriel, maybe was in their mind, which I skipped it. We can read in detail. In the Surah al-Zukhruf, Jesus pericope, just as the significance of Jesus' virgin birth was reformulated as nothing more than demonstration of God's power, so now rather than explicitly denying the possibility of Jesus being an angel, not rather than explicitly denying the possibility of Jesus being an angel, which that's associators didn't think Jesus an angel, but say our angel God is better than your human God. But some Christians may be thinking like that. The associators believe about Jesus' significance to the Christians is instead used as an illustration of God's omnipotence. Overall shows all these miracles, even whatever you say Jesus is or not, even angel is not a big deal. God can bring angel out of humans. So neither humans, not angels are so much superior or different, and they're all different from God. So I will stop here. And actually the real so we saw Quran two passages is using to answer Mushrikeen. The other one is very interesting. I think knowledge of hour would be the important one. And also, it wouldn't take that long. I mean, and I think I can do the Abraham passage too. So, and then also we do see one more thing. Let's see. Yeah, then okay, we need to do knowledge of our before we can go to the bringer of wisdom and then understanding what wisdom really means. And then, so at the beginning of next lecture, we'll finish these verses of related to Jesus and then we go to the Abraham, which we do a shorter one. Although Abraham can be expanded, I try to uh, uh, be specific. So, but this knowledge of our is interesting because irrespective of our discussion of what is Hikmah in Quran means and in the context of Jesus, the fact it says that he, which most probably Jesus, is it even doesn't say a knowledge. It says he is indeed knowledge. And Nahu, he is indeed. And Nahu, knowledge, ilm of the hour. Maybe is a qira'ah problem, a sign of the hour, which kind of when we interpret it, the meaning become closer to that. But Sahib Hussein argues this awkward wording, maybe be quotation mark, actually is justified or is a reason behind it. That is not alam, sign. It is el, knowledge, which make it awkward because targeting or correcting or modifying a view regarding Jesus, which existed among Christians. So as I said, God has used, or Quran has used this occasion, answering mushrikeen, but also targeting few important tenets of Christological beliefs in Christianity, which was the basis of treating Jesus as divine, which Quran did condemn. I'm sorry. Thank you for patience. I know this is a little bit more dense, but inshallah we continue next week.